All right. So peace be upon you all, and welcome to this live stream. I have Cliff here with me, and I'm going to let him introduce himself shortly. But let me first tell you why we're doing this. So I posted the debate that I had with Matt Dillahunty on the channel a few days ago, and what it was about was a discussion related to whether God exists. And in that discussion, I used an example from animal behavior. I think the example is not very common. And I used beavers as an example. And I had this argument that I'm going to explain that according to information theory, this looks like a good pointer to the existence of God. And Cliff disagreed with me in the comment section. And he is working in a relevant field. So I invited him to come on board and explain his argument. Maybe we can have a nice chat about it. And then maybe we can even have some questions if the audience would like to ask some questions. We would like to keep this within an hour. Maybe it takes a little bit more if there are questions. But let's go for it. Cliff, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Cliff Bohm. I'm a Ph.D. student at Michigan State University. My evolutionary theory in general and in specific at evolution of cognition, very, very early cognition.
Okay, so Cliff is studying evolution, and he is also into information theory and information processing, etc. So I think this will give some context. Before we start, I'm just going to remind the audience, if you have not watched the debate that I had with Matt about this, you can actually. The link for the debate is in the description. I think I put it there. And what I'm going to do that is that in like a few minutes, I will go through the presentation that I explain my argument in so that we have some context. And then Cliff can put forward his point, and then we'll have the discussion. So here you go. How do you like that, Cliff?
Sure.
Yeah, so it was a discussion about animal life. This was the debate. It took place on the 8th of Feb. So it's like a couple of weeks. And so it was about whether God existed. And I said, well, God's existence is very clear. And let's look at animal life. And why I wanted to talk about animal life is that animal life is something that we can all observe around us. And hence, it is something that we can all relate to. So you know me. And what are we talking about? We're talking about that there is guidance in life. We are not into an ecosystem. We are not living in nature that acts dumb. We're not living into a mechanical kind of nature. We are living into nature that is swarming and thriving with information and knowledge that is, in my opinion, unjustified to be there unless there is an entity, a conscious entity that is guiding it. So this is my point, because many in the comment section, well, I thought my point was quite clear already, but they asked me to elaborate even on my point. So this is not like a debate, this is like a friendly chat. So my point is that living systems around us, specifically animals that we can relate to and interact with, are showing a degree of knowledge and information that lends itself that those creatures are being guided by another entity of supreme intelligence and wisdom. And then I gave those examples. Why this relates to God? Because, for example, in my religion, in Islam, Allah says in the Quran, in a discussion between Moses and Pharaoh, so Pharaoh asks Moses, who is your God or who is your Lord? So Moses replies, in Arabic in the Quran, قال ربنا الذي أعطى كل شيء خلقه ثم هدى. He said, our Lord is who has given everything its creation and then guided. So it is as if Moses is telling Pharaoh, look around you. Life does not look to be blind creatures stumbling onto each other. There is a level of guidance that he did not only create, but he is creating and he cares about his creation, and he guides his creation. So I don't know why this not so many people that I see around me having discussions about God's existence are looking into this seriously. But since Moses said it in a discussion with Pharaoh, I think it needs that we have a good look at it. So it is a case that our everyday observation, in my opinion, are evidence for the presence and sustenance of God for the universe as a whole, but specifically in this context that we're discussing now, to living animals, to animal life. In my field, which is engineering, you solve problems. But before you solve problem, you need to know what is the problem, what is the need, and then you create a system to solve the need. Okay? And the way we go is that we understand the need, we create a design for this need. So, for example, somebody needs to move from point A to B, then, okay, a good solution might be a car. And then we design the car to the extent that it serves this purpose. But we also do something as engineers. When we design something like a car, we will create something that is called an instruction manual, an operation manual. And the person who is going to drive the car, to be able to drive the car, needs to read this manual so he understands what the steering wheel is, what are the pedals, what is the transmission, etc. And so we give him this guidance about how to use it, also how to maintain it and how to take care of it and how to fix it, etc. But if you design something for a purpose and you do not give instruction manuals, it is not how things work. It is part of the ecosystem where a car is created, that the guidance to use the car is there. And this guidance is knowledge and is information and is wisdom from the creator of the car that then needs to be transferred and taught to the driver so that the car can be used purposefully and beneficially. How does that relate? So God created the universe, he created life, he created the universe for a purpose, he created life for purpose. He has this design for life. This design manifests itself into morphogenesis, specific shapes that this life takes. The parts list are there in the DNA of this life. The assembly instructions are in developmental networks. The cells manufacture the components, and then there is the guidance. And the guidance is what we are going to look at. So the guidance in this presentation has two points. There are creatures that do not have, let's say, quote unquote, free will, and they get their guidance and they live their life in a specific predetermined way. They have those dispositions and they have preceded information that they use this information to lead their life. And there is this creature who is ultimately intelligent, which is the human being. However, he comes knowing nothing. And in the Quran, Allah says, he talks to the humans and he says, I have created you, and when you come to life, you know nothing. When you get out of your mother's wombs, you know nothing. But surprisingly, creatures that are way, way less intelligent than us, they hatch out of eggs or come out of their mother's wombs, and they know plenty. So the question is, where does this information come from? And here I gave this example of this creature that is pretty known, I guess, in the North America, for example, which is called the beaver. And the beaver does this crazy thing. The beaver is a very prominent engineer. Beavers build dams. And what the dams do is that they obstruct the flow of water in a running river, which causes the water level behind the dam to rise. And then the beaver would go to the, as you can see on the presentation, would go to the pond that is formed behind the dam, and he will build something called a lodge. And this lodge will have access from underwater, and then he will also build something called the refrigerator where he will store his stuff. And the design of the dam, the beavers really design dams in a very specific way that can stand to actually can block complete rivers or complete water currents. And they can do something like this. So this is a satellite image. You can see the effect of a beaver dam from space, or actually from a satellite. So this is a forest flooded due to a beaver dam. So those guys actually terraform their environment to the extent that a significant part of the forest will be semi-flooded, it gives them advantage because they can swim to any part of this forest and have access to the food, while other terrestrial animals cannot run after them as fast in the water. So they actually completely change their environment, this small rodent, which is the beaver. When the beavers build dams, they build dams in a specific way that is very, they are civil engineers. So number one, they cut down trees like this picture in the down left. They cut down trees, and when they cut down trees, they do not carry the tree. They cut down trees so that they can cut off the branches, the little branches that are high in the tree, and then they will transport the branches like this photo. Before putting in the branches, they will put boulders of stone as a foundation for the dam, and then they will lay the wooden pieces vertically, and then they would put other pieces or smaller branches horizontally, and so they like weave the dam, and then they will shut holes by using mud, to the extent that we end up with this mighty dam that we can see in the picture. And then they build the lodge. Those dams can be up to 500 meters long and 10 feet high. One beaver can do that. And the amazing thing is that beavers do that even if they don't learn it from their parents. So a scientist, a Swedish scientist, if I remember correctly, did those experiments on beavers and separated beavers from their parents right after birth. No chance whatsoever to learn anything from the parents. And then exposed a group of beavers that was in captivity, but lived with their parents. So they never saw a dam being built. Another group of beavers that never even saw their parents. And both of them built dams once they were exposed to a running current of water. They would even start building dams even if they were tricked that there is a running current of water. So once they are signaled that there is water, they start building the dams because they want to terraform their environment, they want to build their lodge, etc. And then their lodge is a piece of engineering marvel. It is like a castle that humans build in the middle of a lake, or they build a ditch around their castle. So the beaver lodge is built like this, like in the picture in the middle, either in the middle of the water or close to the shore. It is not accessible to any other animal. It has no entry because the entry point is from under the water. There is a ventilation system so that the air inside the lodge will get changed, and it will spend the winter there. It becomes warm there, and then it will create this thing called the refrigerator that you can see in this picture, where they would move some branches with green leaves, put them underwater so that they are accessible to the beaver. The beaver can, in the middle of the winter, where maybe the surface even of the pond will be frozen or very cold, it will get out of the lodge underwater, go to the refrigerator, pick up some of the food that it has there, bring it back into the lodge and eat it. And the other creatures around it cannot access the lodge, cannot access the refrigerator, and the dam keeps the water level high. This is the ingenuity of and the genius of this little rodent. It does all of this. It does all of this without being taught, even if it's separated from its parents. It just knows this as a baby beaver. If you are a baby beaver, you know how to build a dam, which is completely amazing. So what is the point? The point is, when there is information at one end, this information needs to come from somewhere. Okay? So a beaver, just by being a beaver, has the bill of material of what a dam needs to be constructed. It knows that it needs stones. It knows that it needs wood. It knows how to arrange the wood. It knows how to use the mud. It knows how to fix the dam when the dam gets broken. It goes and fixes the dam, detects that there is a breach and fixes it. It can even find a dam that was an artifact or a legacy of a previous beaver and evaluate whether the dam is good or not. And if it's good enough to be fixed, it will fix it. So we are looking at this kind of creature, and it does this. So the question now is, where is the information come from? So information at one end means that there is a transmitter and that there is a channel. So my argument is, if there is this information, if there is this knowledge at the end point, which is the beaver, then there needs to be somebody who transmits this information. And this is not only the case with the beaver. I gave many examples in the debate: birds that migrate, bees that build hexagonal things, birds that build nests, animals that have plans for hunting, etc. The examples around us are endless. It is up to our observation. So the point is, there is this global mind, an overarching mind over nature that is communicating to animal living life, to insects, to animals, to fishes, something like a salmon that goes into a sweet river against the current, lays eggs and dies, and then the eggs will go with the current, go back to the sea, and then after the cycle will go back, and they were little hatched eggs. And so who's teaching all those creatures? My answer to this is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran on the tongue of Moses, that his Lord is the one who has given everything its creation and guided. This is guidance that we directly see. It is no surprise that Allah or God sends to humans his guidance, but we have free will. So I can receive his guidance and accept it, and maybe Cliff can receive his guidance and become agnostic, and somebody else can receive his guidance and become a hard atheist. We have this choice. He does not put this information into our mind about our way of life, because we are here to choose our way of life. This is my whole argument. And this is the final slide, where this is the typical model by Claude Shannon. There is always an information source, there is transmission, there is a destination. If you find information at one end, it cannot be that there is no source and there is no channel, but information just comes from nowhere. Because the only information that you can get from nowhere would be white noise, which will not be beneficial. So my closing thing is, God gives to each creation that he has created its way of life, but to us he gives intellect that we can then use to choose our way of life. So here is my, that was my 2 cents. Now, here we go, Cliff. If you'd like to go, just explain, put a presentation up, it's up to you. And when you're finished, we can just open the chat. You have as much time as you would like.
That's fine. So, I'm going to lay out a few pieces. I'm going to put my pieces on the board, so to speak. The first thing is, let's talk about Claude Shannon and information theory, and specifically what he said and what he was talking about. He talks about this. First, he talks about this concept of entropy. And commonly in the vernacular, we talk about a system increasing entropy. But what exactly is entropy? Entropy is a measure, and what it measures is the size of the data set that you would need in order to explain something, whether that's a signal, the orbit of a planet, the shape of a rock. It doesn't matter. Entropy is how much would I need to say, or you could think of it as how small could I compress what I need to say in order to describe something. Now, information is correlated entropy. So if we think of entropy as well, okay, let me say one other thing before I get into more specifics. Entropy or information is an emergent property of matter. It is the state of matter. And so when we talk about information, what we're talking about is two collections of matter whose states are correlated. So if I am walking along and I step in some mud, and in the mud there is an impression of the bottom of my shoe. The impression of the bottom of the shoe correlates in an inverse fashion, but it's a perfect inverse fashion. It's a mold of the shoe to the shoe. You could say that the imprint in the mud contains information about the sole of the shoe. That's what information is. It's a just shared state between some collections of matter. It has to be implemented in matter. And all of the trends is assuming that there's a signal, and the signal has some value, and we want to make sure that the value gets transmitted. We can ask about how much we can compress the signal while still transmitting the information. That's what all of that Claude's all the Shannon entropy stuff that has to do with signal transmission had everything to do with how much we can compress and how much can we mess up a signal, and then how much information do we have to integrate into that, how much additional information we have to integrate into it so that if it gets messed up, we can decode it, right? And then you get into the whole thing of encoding and decoding encryptions also comes into this. But that's what information is. So that's the first thing. Information is just shared state between different pieces of matter. Now, in my work, I use digital evolution. So I effectively evolve computer programs. It's not always computer programs. Sometimes it's just a list of values and we're putting them through some evaluation function. Sometimes it's more like circuits on a circuit board. But you can think of them as sort of logical operators, and how they're which logical operator or mathematical operator and how they interconnect, that's evolved. And then this then creates an agent, and the agent is evaluated. Now, if it's a list of values, perhaps it's simply a fitness function. A certain value is better than another value. If in the cases where I evolve things that are more like logic circuits, I tend to evolve very simple virtual robots. And in this case, I often have them doing things like navigation tasks or harvesting tasks. So you can think of a Roomba. Imagine if you had a Roomba and you fill the room with M&Ms and you want to get that Roomba to vacuum up all the M&Ms. That's the kind of a task that I'm talking about. Now, some of the tasks that we do also involve learning. And so what we'll do is we'll say, look, the red M&Ms are the ones you're supposed to pick up. The green M&Ms are the ones you're not supposed to pick up. So go around and pick up all the red ones, except every time we start a test, we will vary whether it's the red ones that are good or the green ones. And so the agent will have to try something to figure out if that was good or not, and then alter its behavior based on the quality that the response that it gets from the environment. So that's the kind of stuff that I do. And we commonly see complexity and function and an ability to interact with the environment resulting from an evolutionary process. We see that generally, if information can be encoded in the genome in an evolutionary process, then it will be. So if the environment doesn't change, then the behavior will tend to be fully encoded in the genome. But if we have a changing environment, like where we're changing which color M&M the agent should be consuming, then they can't localize that information to the genome. And then what they'll do is they'll localize the ability to learn which type of food they should be eating. Now, that having all been said, we can talk more about that, but I just wanted to lay that out as an introduction where I'm coming from. Evolution shouldn't really be thought of as engineering. It's really a process that occurs in reverse. It's the reverse of engineering. It's trial and error. So in engineering, you say, oh, I have a problem, and then you conceive of a solution and you engineer the solution based on the problem. In trial and error, you try things, and if they work, you keep them, and if they don't work, you throw them away. Except that generally, when we do trial and error, we try things that make sense, right? So even there, we're kind of doing engineering. Evolution doesn't do that. It just tries random stuff. And if it happens to be good, it keeps it. And if not, it doesn't keep it. So trying to compare the evolutionary process to engineering, it doesn't mesh. I guess the last thing I want to say is, when we talk about what an agent knows at birth, both the agents I evolve, they can know all kinds of stuff, right, before they've even started to experience their environment. But in terms of, say, humans, we actually know a bunch of stuff at birth. But one of the things that's really important that we know is we know how to learn things. So immediately there's been a good amount of work on this. Babies start to look around, they start to see things, they start to integrate information, and learn about how their environment works. And that's sort of, I mean, I agree with you, that's kind of the thing we come hardwired with. It's just that, I think that we come hardwired with it because it's the result of an evolutionary process, not because somebody imparted it there. And I have an understanding of the evolutionary process because it's what I do. I witness this happening on a daily basis. So that's what I have to say.
Okay, so thank you, Cliff, for your notes. I don't think we have so much disagreement about what information theory says, what is entropy, and transmission of information, etc. Now, let's cut through the chase and go to the specific example that I talked about. Now we have creatures, living creatures, animals, like this beaver. And at birth, they have the bill of material of a dam, the building instructions how to build a dam. They pick up the right location for building the dam. They know how to maintain the dam. They know how to build a lodge. They understand ventilation. They understand cooling and refrigeration. They understand how to position these things around. They know when to build them. They know when to get out of them. And all of this is just because they are a beaver. They don't get the chance like your Roomba vacuum cleaner to, we don't like you get a beaver and you have to train every beaver and tell every beaver, like we do, for example, with animals in the circus. So you get this new lion and you teach the lion to jump in the circle of fire, okay? This lion dies, but he has offspring. You still need to teach its offspring how to, jump through the circle of fire. And you do the same thing with the bear that rides the bicycle, etc. So our experience with animals is that even when you teach an animal something, its offspring will not just inherit it. So we don't see examples from life, clear examples in our observation that if you teach an animal something, its offspring will pick it up. So my question to you, now we're not really discussing how a beaver became a beaver in the first place. This we can disagree or agree that evolution actually works, which I will disagree with you, obviously. Because I think it doesn't work. I think in engineering terms, it doesn't work. I agree with you that trial and error is not engineering. And to me, living systems are very well engineered. I cannot believe that they have evolved by trial and error. And then we can have another discussion about if it's trial and error, who is setting the objective function? This would be my question to you. Because you have an objective function in your Roomba machine.
I do not have an objective function, though.
Yeah, so you wanted to pick up the red pills, for example, or the blue pills or something.
No. I'm saying that the red M&Ms are either food or poison. Okay. So I don't want them to pick them up.
You don't
those
want them to pick them up.
Who consume things that aren't poison will produce more offspring.
Yeah. So what I am saying is we can discuss whether or not a beaver can come out with an evolutionary mechanism in a different discussion. I think this discussion is a discussion of its own. But my question to you, how can you explain what the beaver does by anything else other than that there is global transmission of information to animal life to the extent that it knows what it knows? Do you have any other explanation?
The information can be transmitted. Behavioral information can be transmitted genetically.
So you think that the instructions of building the dam, the materials for building the dam, etc., all what I have said is genetic in the beaver?
Yes. Yeah. And to that end, if you mentioned there's an interesting bit of behavior, which is that if you have a speaker playing the sound of running water, beavers will pile sticks around it. They'll start building a dam around it. If you have a pipe and the pipe has a clear window on it and it has running water and the beavers can see the running water, they will ignore that. So the beavers are not responding to, they're not saying, oh, I've got to stop the water from running and doing something reasonable at that. They are responding in very instinctual ways. In this case, one of the behaviors. Now, I think that there's a whole suite of behaviors that result in a beaver building a dam and then building a lodge. But one of those behaviors is if they hear the sound of water, they pile sticks on it. And the thing is, what I see in my evolved agents is we see two things that are really interesting. One is we see the ability for them to evolve complex behavior, not immediately. There do have to be stepping stones, so that it has to evolve as a series of behaviors. There's actually a very nice paper from one of my colleagues who showed that they actually showed the evolution of a path following behavior in these digital agents that required learning, and they showed how there were evolutionary steps that they could document where certain behavior developed, and then there was a mutation that changed the behavior and gave them a benefit, and then later, a few thousand generations later, there was another arrival of another benefit, and in the end, this thing was able to identify, whether it's basically identify a critical feature of its environment, and then use that information to perform a task. So that, and I'm also in my work, I have one of the papers that I linked in that original comment is a method that I've come up with where we can look at how we can use information theory to look at how information flows through these digital brains. We can actually see where the information is. And one of the things that it uncovered is that sometimes you get completely unnecessary encryption. These brains will become more complex than they need to be while solving a task. But the side effect of unnecessary encryption is that encryption is just the information. It's information. And brains, these brains that did this ridiculous encryption, were actually integrating information. If there had been some fitness benefit to having that information integrated, those brains that got wired in more complex ways would be more likely to find those correlations and then be able to use them to generate fitness. So to me, coincidental events resulting in increases in fitness, that's what evolution does.
Okay, so I just want to ask you the question again, because I thought you were going to answer it, but I didn't seem to pick up the answer. You seem to believe that the bill of material and building instructions of Adam and a lodge are encoded in DNA. Did I pick that up correctly? In the DNA of the beaver?
Yes.
Do you have evidence for that?
It seems to be that way.
Yeah, is there a scientific? Because what I know about DNA and RNA and translation and transcription, etc., is that DNA is transcribed into RNA and eventually proteins. So how, in your opinion, where in your opinion in the DNA of a beaver is the design of a dam, including its bill of material, building instructions, and maintenance instructions, and the dodge, and the refrigerator?
Sure. So DNA does a whole bunch of stuff in order to get a body and then get a brain and get cognition. And it's a rather involved process, and I don't understand the whole thing. Right? Again, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff that's conjecture. Some of it may be wrong, because what I specifically can talk about is that evolution can result in complexity and function. That I can speak to. I can show you evidence on that. But you're asking me to answer something that's not my direct field of expertise, so bear with me. But the first thing is that when you start translating DNA, you start getting proteins, and you start going from the first inseminated cell, you get this mass of cells. Now gravity starts to act on this mass of cells, and so there's already a notion of up and down, and there's also it develops in the front and back. And the way that up and down is realized within that original mass of cells is because of chemical gradients. So there's vertical, because of gravity, there's chemical gradients among these cells, and so the cells start to differentiate, and you get skin cells and brain cells and heart cells and all the other stuff. In a similar process, once you actually start getting to the nervous system and you start getting to the brain's development, within the brain and the neurons that develop in the brain, there are also chemical gradients that cause the differentiation of different areas of the brain. Now, some of these end up being very specific. So I know for example, that there is a specific set of neurons that develops in, I think it's I want to say it's stingrays, that have to do with the escape mechanism. They're very well known because they're these two neurons that run basically the length of the body. They're in the same place on every stingray. You can do an autopsy and find them. And those neurons, they connect in a very specific way in the brain. They connect in a very specific way to the tail, and they cause an escape response. So in the presence of a certain stimuli, boom, these neurons fire, and that stingray goes, it goes off. And so, that's a very simple behavior. There's a really cool circuit that shows up in moths. I've never had a chance to do this, but supposedly if you take some keys and there's a bunch of moths flying around, if you take these keys and you rattle them, the moths will drop out of the air if they've been sort of, flying around a light outside. And the reason is conjectured that the keys make a sound that's similar to the moths to bats' echolocation. And moths evolved a little circuit so that if you rattle, if they hear echolocation, or if they hear rattling keys, it doesn't matter. Right? If they hear anything at that pitch, this circuit goes off and they stop flying and they fall to the ground, and then the bats don't go after them because they only go after things that are flying, supposedly. Again, I've never had a chance to test that. I would like to be outside where there are a bunch of moths and then I can test it, but so far I have not had a chance. But that's a moderately complex circuit. That's a relatively complex behavior. Now, it's an evolved behavior. It's not a learned behavior, but I don't see why. There's no limit on how complex a behavior can get implemented in these circuits.
So again, Cliff. So now let's reach something solid, because number one, I care about you personally. And by the way, we have had a discussion like 2 years ago, but you don't maybe remember it. It was about something else, but not live.
Oh, okay. I know. I think I might remember. I didn't know it was you though.
Yeah, it was about evolution. It was about evolution. Yeah, evolution of the creature itself. Not now. My question is this. I don't care how a beaver has come to existence. Okay. There is a beaver today, okay? My question is, this beaver, through its embryogenesis or whatever, has his genes, and we know what genes do. Genes produce proteins, and there is developmental networks that, at the end of the day, you get different body parts and different tissues, etc. So eventually get a brain in the beaver. Fine, good and well. Now, having the brain is different from having information and knowledge in the brain. So if a human being is you get this human baby, and you put him in a closed room, and once he can draw something, he draws the Empire State, for example, or a building with beams, and and he tells you it needs concrete, it needs steel, it needs wood, it needs, the building instructions are so and so. You will immediately ask, who told this guy about this? He never saw a building before. He never saw steel before. He never saw wood before. He doesn't know what cement is. How come once he gets out of the room, he starts looking for cement, steel, puts them together and makes a building, like what a civil engineer will do? It wouldn't make any sense to you. You will have to infer that somebody has given him the information. There is no other way. Now, what you're telling me, okay, maybe the information has come to this baby's mind. Now we're talking about the baby beaver. We can talk about anything else, by the way. There's a plethora of animals that have very complex behaviors, that have information about geolocations, for example, like migrating birds, about salinity of water, things about symbiosis, for example. I had in my presentation, by the way, this nice picture I would like to share with you. For example, for these two very interesting creatures. This is the migration paths of birds that go from the very north of Europe to the south of Europe or to Africa. These are the salmon fish that have this huge thousands of kilometers where they need to go into the river and go back, and they have never gone there. The last time they were there, they were eggs that were hatching. You have this bird that goes into the mouth of the alligator, and you just hatch an alligator and hatch this bird. They will find each other. It will start cleaning its teeth. But in the lower picture, another bird comes to the alligator. It will eat it. So the alligator knows this bird, and the bird knows the alligator, and they know each other from birth. You have very simple behaviors like suckling, but you also have very complex hunting behavior in a cat or in a cheetah or in a puma, etc., that do this ABC chart, which is very sophisticated hunting plans. Those creatures, you have those crabs. You know what crabs do? They line up in a specific order to exchange their shells. Very sophisticated, calculated behavior. All of those creatures, they just bees and their hexagons, birds with their nests, etc. Nature is full of those very simple, from insects to complex animals that come into this life with amazing information. There is a whole area of engineering called biomimicry, okay, where you mimic things, living things, to engineer things. You engineer sonar after the bats, or electromagnetic scanning after sharks, or this and that, and aeroplanes after this or that creature. Very sophisticated hunting behaviors you can learn from birds or cheetahs, etc. So we learn from these guys. We can learn about building dams from beavers. So the question is, where on earth or in heaven does the beaver know this information? There is no evidence that there is information like bills of material of a dam or a lodge written in any DNA of any creature. We know that the most sophisticated creature, which is us, comes to this world without any knowledge about building anything. We can learn it. We have the intellect to learn things, and we are fast learners. But you don't just hatch out of nowhere knowing how to build the Empire State. You need to learn how to build the Empire State. You need to learn how to build the simplest of the things. But those guys, they just know. So my question to you again is, as a person who knows about information, can we have information from nowhere? You're saying it's coming from DNA, but there is no evidence that it's coming from DNA.
It's not coming from DNA. It's coming from where? It's coming from evolution. It's coming from trial and error. It's stored in the DNA.
Good. So number one, we don't have any evidence that learned behaviors, like, as I say, we have been putting lions into circuses for hundreds of years, and once the big lion dies and the little lion comes to life, or the lioness dies and gives birth to a small lioness, the new lioness will not jump in the circle of fire on its own. It will not do the trick. It will not, juggle things, etc. You have to teach them it will not ride a bicycle, for example. You have to teach them from scratch. Set aside building something. So there is no evidence on the ground that learned behaviors are transmitted.
So two things are needed in order for evolution to work. One of them is we need a selection pressure, and the other one is we need enough time. And time is going to be measured in generations. But we all, okay, I said two things. There's actually three things needed. You need inheritance, you need variation, and you need selection. So in order to see the evolution of lions who are born innately understanding how to respond, we would need to have many more lions who are being born under the conditions of the circus tent, however you want to describe it. And we would need many more generations, because a mutation has either the genetic structure for the behavior already exists within the population. If it already exists, then it's just a matter of evolution, the selection pressure being such that trait is selected for. But if it's not already present, well, then a mutation will have to arise, or likely many mutations will have to arise, which together get you to that behavior. So in the case of the beavers building dams, one of the thoughts is that beavers, well, one thought is that beavers became aquatic. I don't know. I was watching a video earlier today. I think it was 80 million years ago, something like that, a really long time ago. They were already aquatic. They were already cutting down trees. They were already eating leaves and bark from trees as food source. And one of the theories is that them cutting down trees so that they could get to the more tender stuff at the top resulted in some of the trees falling in water, and sometimes that would cause dams. And those beavers that became conditioned, that genetically became conditioned to push their branches into the streams, would likely form dams. And then this gave them a benefit. And so now, if they maintain their dams, this gave them a bigger benefit. And so over time, it wasn't like overnight they suddenly had, dams and lodges. They had dug burrows underground initially. Over time, we don't know if the lodges came first and then the dams, or the dams and then the lodges, but we don't know. But we're pretty sure that they were cutting down trees before they were building dams. So if you think, oh, I've got it, and we think that they went in the water before they were building dams. So we say, okay, I have an aquatic, wide-tailed rodent that cuts down trees. I already have that. That's already there. And I don't think that it's too much to ask that they have an instinct to cut down trees. I don't think you would have a problem with that.
And now it's not a matter of whether they have instinct to cut down trees or not. I believe that according to evolutionary theory, having an instinct just to cut down trees makes sense, because if cutting down trees does not give you a fitness benefit, then it doesn't make sense to cut down trees.
It gives them access to food.
Actually, beavers have good access to food from branches that are soft, that are living close to the ground. But they actually cut down the trees not to eat them. They cut down the trees to get the branches of the right size that are up there, because they cut down thick trees that they cannot move. They cut down the big trees. They cut the branches up there, and then they use the branches to build the dam. So the behavior is very sophisticated.
Sure, but
and they will not. Yeah, and they will not use actually the branches, because before they have laid the foundation of the dam first. So they use the boulders first, the stones. And then they will start setting up the wooden beams, and then they will start weaving it, and then they will start sealing it with mud, and then they will wait for the water level to rise, and then they will start putting up the lodge with the ventilation and the refrigerator and everything. These guys have a complete civil engineering manual built with bills of material, with instructions, with order, with maintenance. It's completely. If you want to invoke evolution, I don't mind, but tell me how this evolved. And let us say that one beaver, for one funny reason, cut down a tree with over a river. Okay, he cut down what tree? So what? This is not what it's doing now. And if it cut down one tree and it fell on the river, and then what happens? The river was blocked. It will not go, and the same one will incidentally build a lodge. There is no fitness advantage for cutting down the tree that cuts the water supply. Essentially, nothing happened.
I mean, you're making a claim that there is no fitness advantage, and my understanding is that I could imagine a case where the low-hanging foliage is consumed. Perhaps the trees evolved in response in some environment to the beavers, because they were at high density, and they started having their trees at a higher level to avoid predation from the beavers. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't have a time machine. I can't tell you exactly.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is that I witness the evolution of complexity and function from natural selection, including the ability to learn, including the ability during lifetime to change behavior based on your environment.
Wow, you said something nice. So I don't mind that a creature can start its life not knowing something, and through its own experience in that life end up knowing something. So you train a dog to do something for you, and the dog knows how to do this thing for you. Okay? We've been training dogs, God knows, for how many thousands of years. Okay? But we still need to train each dog. Okay? However, on the microevolution in your lexicon terms, our intervention with the breeding of dogs has really made dogs look differently. Okay, but we still need to train each single dog, and we still need to train each single circus animal. So the empirical experience, the empirical evidence says that what a creature learns during its lifetime has no bearing on the offspring of the creature. Now we can guess whatever we want to guess about how one beaver might have found a way to hide from some creature or to reach to food that other creatures didn't reach, etc. But has no bearing on beavers globally knowing a specific set of instructions to do a specific thing. The same thing for birds building nests, for example. Some of those nests are pretty complex, crazily complex. They just know, just because this species of bird is hatched from an egg, it knows how to build its specific kind of nest
I don't disagree.
Crazily engineered. So yeah,
right. I don't disagree that it's amazing. I don't disagree that it's phenomenal. I just disagree that you need some supernatural source for the information. You don't. Simply by introducing, you can get behavior from genetics. We know that because we can see inherited behavior. We can see that certain.
Good.
I mean, you're claiming that it's not inherited behavior because God's putting it there somewhere between the inception and the birth. You're saying that God's going in there and sticking the information in the brain, and I'm saying no. The brain can come preloaded with information. And one of the big behaviors that you're totally discounting is the ability to learn. The ability to learn is more complex than the ability to know how to construct a dam. Because the ability to learn requires that you can change your internal wiring as opposed to simply coming hardwired. If a machine comes hardwired, it can just do one thing. If a machine can learn, well, that machine is already much more, even if it comes with no pre-wiring, that machine is much more complex. And so the fact of the matter is that humans come with this insane ability to do learning and deep association. Again, you're going to claim that you're going to attribute that to God, and I'm saying we don't need to do that. We can see, looking across a suite of animals, we can see various levels of intelligence. Whether you look at mammals and you look up through the primates and then to apes and humans, or you can look at birds, and then you get to the corvids, I think it is, the crows and the ravens, or you look at cephalopods and you get up to octopus. These are three different cases of parallel evolution of really advanced cognitions. And if you look at their evolutionary histories, if you look at the genetics of these organisms, you can see different levels of cognition branching off. The closer you get to humans, the closer the intellect is like a human, right? The closer you get to a crow or a raven, the more the intelligence is close to a crow or a raven. The closer you get to an octopus, the more the intelligence is like an octopus. This is what evolution predicts.
Okay, so we're going somewhere. So set aside that my best explanation, or my proposal for a best explanation, is that there is a supreme being that is beaming information all over the place. Okay. Now it doesn't make a difference in my argument when or how the information is beamed. My whole point is that the information is beamed. I don't know when, I don't know how. My point is simply there is information that needs to be a transmitter. Now, you have given some good examples that I would like to address because I see them actually as good examples of the argument that I'm making. So what we are looking at, Cliff, is information about the external or the environment external to the beaver system itself. So we are not looking at behaviors that relate to the system of the beaver itself. So we are not looking to a direct response to an external stimulus. We are looking at methodological process with materials and instructions and order, etc., etc. So there is one trigger for it. It can be the temperature for migration. It can be puberty for building a nest or something. It can be winter is coming and there is water current. Let's go and build a dam. Whatever it is, there is one trigger. You can trick an animal that the trigger exists, and that's because we're smarter than them. But once it sees the trigger, it starts executing this program. Okay, it starts executing the program. It will fetch from its database. I'm using information systems terminology. It will fetch the bills of material. It will start looking for the materials in its environment, assembling them, arranging them in the right order until it has the right thing, and then it will start maintaining it. Now, I have gone through the literature. To my best knowledge, which was like 20 days ago, there is no genetic explanation for this kind of complex, quote-unquote, instinctual behavior. There is no genetic explanation for it. You can speculate that it might be somewhere in the genetic system that we do not know, but what we know about the genetic system does not lend itself to this at all. We know that genes are transcribed into RNA that is transcribed into proteins, or RNA itself can be used for something like a ribozyme or something. But eventually what DNA produces is RNA and proteins. And then proteins will be assembled in a certain way, directed by developmental networks to produce different tissues, according to whatever kind of morphology that that this higher order system will direct. So we'll eventually have neurons, but the neurons are blank. You don't have building instructions. So you have a building instructions for a computer, and part of the computer is the computer memory, but the memory starts blank. And blank, I mean white noise. So you start a beaver with a brain that has no information in it. So you're saying, no, the brain can develop with the building instructions of a dam, including the materials, the orders, the maintenance instructions, etc., when to build it, how to build it, exactly how. And this information is very uniform across all beavers, so it's not learned. It's not subject to the learning experience of each individual beaver. It's just the beaver will build a dam. A bird will build a nest. This bird will find this crocodile. This bee will build this bee nest, etc. This kind of animal will have this hunting plan. They can get better in doing it with time. The first dam maybe the beaver will build will be less efficient than the second dam, but he will know to build how the first dam anyway. If it's stronger, maybe it can carry better boulders. I don't know. Maybe if you make it weaker, it cannot carry the boulders. If it's disabled, maybe it cannot build the dam at all. But it knows how to build the dam. This is the whole amazing thing. So according to the literature, according to the literature, no, there is no literature that says that this is genetic. Not any instinctual behavior. Actually, there is no evidence that it's genetic.
So are you familiar?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with GWAS, gene-wide association studies?
So they have solved the beaver problem?
No.
I'm not.
Is a gene-wide association study. So there was when they first started to get full genomic data, they thought, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to have a revolution in medicine. We are going to get the genomes of 1,000 people, 1 million people, however many they can get, and we're going to start trying to correlate sites in the genome with certain disorders or certain things, eye color, hair, whatever. Now, I don't remember which ones specifically. There were a couple of successes. But for the most part, GWAS was a complete and utter dead end, because there's no one gene, right? You could find genes that were associated with something, but you could not find a gene that if you turn this gene off, if you have this gene, you have this property. If you don't have this gene, you don't have this property. It barely ever happens. Evolution results in highly, I can't stress this enough, highly encrypted structures. This is everything in my research is saying. I work with ridiculously simple structures, and they already start to show the artifacts of encryption. I mean, by encryption, I mean that they are wired in ways that are more complex than they need to be. Why? Because when evolution starts tinkering, if some mutation gains you fitness, then that mutation is going to be selected for and built upon. And it's going to be very hard to disentangle that, that whatever change happened, it's going to be very hard to back out of that. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because you're saying, where in the genome is this information about the behavior? I'm saying we can't even find whether or not, what your hair color is going to be, or whether you're going to have autism, or whether you're going to be left-handed. We can't find that in the genome, but we know that it's inherited. So we know it has to be transmitted. It's either transmitted by the genome or some epigenetics, some multi-generational epigenetics. And yes, there is passage of some information from parent to child, although it's very limited through epigenetic channels. It's certainly not the ability of a lion to jump through a fiery hoop. That's not what multi-generational epigenetics does. But there are some cases of multi-generational epigenetics. But the fact that we can't point to, right now at least, we can't point to a spot in the genome and go, this is where putting stones at the bottom of the dam is. Yeah, because it's not going to be like that. What's going to happen is that the neurons are going to be organized in a way, because of this very complex developmental process, such that certain stimuli, and you've recognized this, certain stimuli are going to elicit certain behaviors. And that's what this is. I don't think that the beaver is building a dam so much as, under a certain stimuli, they're moving rocks. Under a certain stimuli, they're moving sticks and mud. Under a certain stimuli, they're making a pile of sticks. Right? That this is what I shouldn't say right, because that makes an assumption that you agree with me. I'm just stating that my understanding work is that these are all stimulus responses. Now, maybe the beaver does have a notion of what's going on. I don't know what the beaver's cognition is. I've never been a beaver, right? But we tend to have a very good sense of information, in that we do model construction. In our brains, we build models, we do future prediction, and then we act on our future predictions. We know that spiders do this. Spiders build models. If you take I don't know how they've done it, but they've taken spiders and they've looked at the brain of the spider when it's figuring out how it's going to navigate a path, and they can see in the brain that the spider's making a plan. It's sort of projecting into the future. How am I gonna navigate this path? And then it does the thing that it thought about, right? And so a spider can do future planning. So I don't know if a beaver, I assume a beaver can learn. I assume a beaver can have a plan. But I also think that if a beaver is going to pile up sticks on a speaker on a cement floor, because the speaker happens to sound like running water, then I don't think the beaver is building a dam so much as piling sticks on a noise.
Okay, so what I will do is this. I will let's consider that this was your closing statement. I will also say a statement. I will run a video about how the beaver is building a dam for you and me and the audience to enjoy it, and then we can have like 15 minutes of questions. How do you think about that?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so my point is like this. If a beaver in a forest somewhere, sometime a million years ago or whatever, had an experience where, the premonition or the understanding of how to build a dam comes to it by a prehistoric human who has taught it to do this, like prehistoric, like modern humans teach animals things all the time. My point is, whatever is in your brain, Cliff, does not go to your sperm. And whatever is in a female's brain does not go to its ovum. What we learn does not transmit to our gametes. This is a fact. We know that. Maybe the environment that we have been exposed to can affect some of our epigenetic factors, and some epigenetic factors can change our morphology during our life, and somehow these epigenetics can affect few generations before they recoil. But we know that what we learn does not go to our sperm and ovum. We know that it does not affect our gametes at all. So the trick is, whatever beaver at any point of time has learned, and whatever coincidences that it has run to, whatever luck it had or misfortune it had, will not affect its sperms and ova. So if one beaver has dropped a tree and another beaver has, run into a hole that had good ventilation, and another one found some good food under the water, refrigerated, etc., all of those experiences that were to the good luck of that creature will have no bearing on its gametes. So there's no transmission there. I don't think we can invoke evolution at all. And the papers that I have read and the literature that I have read that tried to explain complex, quote unquote, instinctual behavior, they either state clearly that it's a dead end to look into the DNA or the genetics in general, or they say, well, maybe they can put some speculative statements. Maybe it's there, but we don't know how. DNA is too complex. We don't even know, like you said, we don't even know how our hair color is determined completely. It's too tricky, etc. In the human genome, we only know like 2 to 1.5 to 2% of what the genes do anyway. The other stuff we're starting to learn, etc. So there's plenty of things to learn there. Now, all of this doesn't make a difference to me. What makes a difference to me is there is information in a physical system that relates to the external environment that does not relate to the physical system. A bird knows the location of Morocco. It's living in North Europe, and it knows the location of Morocco on the map. And it knows the route that should lead it there. This is completely crazy. It has nothing to do with the physical structure of the bird. And if one bird had some good luck to go to Morocco when it was winter, and it survived, then this information will not pass to the egg of that bird. So this thing is my explanation, what I put as the best explanation. There is an external source to the bird and to the globe and to the river and to the forest that's telling the beaver that it has equipped with the teeth that can cut the trees. Now, this is the amazing thing. The beaver has the teeth to cut the trees. The beaver has this thing that looks like a tail, which is like a pedal that can, go fast in the water. It has features in its claws or its little hands to carry the boulders, etc. So there is this external entity. It has to be the same entity because the morphology of the beaver also makes the beaver able to perform the tasks of building a dam in a semi-aquatic environment. So it has to be the same designer because, the beaver is fit for a purpose, and then it has the information to use all its tools for it. So I'm giving you a hammer, and I never taught you how to use the hammer. You will not be able to use the hammer, and you'll not even know what's a nail. But this guy gets out of its, hatches out of somewhere, brings the hammer, brings the nails, and starts, building a boat. What's happening? Who taught it to build boats? So this is the question. I think the reasonable explanation, or the best explanation, let's say, is that this thing is clearly information that is there to guide. It needs to be from a source of information. This information source knows about environments, knows about the structure of living things, knows about physics and engineering. And what this external source does is that it is guaranteeing that this ecosystem is equipped by tools, and it uses the tools to live and survive. It does its work on the physical aspect, so the morphology is good, and it does its work on the information aspect, so it preloads the creature with this information one way or the other. By the way, if we at a point of time find that it is encoded somewhere in the physical system, the question will be the same. How did it get there? How did it get there while this is information about the external environment? It's not about the physical environment. Can it be encrypted during the evolutionary process? Well, no. I mean, in my opinion, no. But since we don't even know that this is happening in genetics anyway, I think we would rather not go with speculation. We'd rather go into what we know about information. It needs an information source. It needs a channel. And then there is a recipient. My best explanation is, I would like to call this external source God. If you would like, for example, somebody else would like to say, maybe there are aliens who have us in a test tube where planet Earth is sitting in their lab, and they're beaming this information all over the place. Fine, your God is an alien, whoever says that. But it doesn't even look like a good explanation. The best explanation, in my opinion, is the supreme being who has designed physics and chemistry, has designed life in the physical sense, and is also responsible for the information that makes this life behave this way, with the strange exception of the most intelligent creature on this planet, which is humans, that come with no preloaded information. Why? Because we have free will and we need to choose the way of our life. We choose the way of our life. You choose to be agnostic. I choose to be a religious person. Somebody else, a Muslim, somebody else chooses to be Christian. Somebody else is left-wing, right-wing, anarchist, libertarian, all the ways of life that we have. Bohemian, I want to live on the top of the tree. I want to go to the desert and live underwater. Whatever it is, we choose our way of life. And then we learn this way of life. And when we die, guess what? Our children choose their way of life independent of us. But those animals, they just get preloaded, and their kids get preloaded, and their kids get preloaded ad infinitum, which is, I agree with you, it's totally amazing. But before we go into the questions, I will show the movie. It's a short movie. It's a few minutes. If you'd like to say something before the movie, go ahead.
No, I just want to respond to what you said, and maybe
sure.
To end right here. I want to be really very specific. What I evolve evolves behavior. I evolve behavior, which includes the ability to respond to the environment, even to the extent of learning. So you're saying, how can it happen that evolution can encode information? And I'm saying random mutations plus selection results in behavior. That's what I do. Like, if I haven't been clear about that, I'm sorry, but everything you just said is completely counter to what I actually do. I've published papers on this.
Here in this lake.
So
it's autoplay.
This is I want to be clear that this is where I'm coming from. I'm not speculating. I said I wasn't going to state things that I couldn't defend. This is what I do. It's simply that random mutations plus selection results in complex structures and behaviors. So that's sort of what you have to account for. Because what Matt couldn't do when you were talking to him was he couldn't provide you with data. He could only say, well, this is what scientists say. I'm one of the scientists, and I can say this actually happens. And I observe it. I can do it in real time.
Actually, let me very specific. I thought I responded to that, but I will respond in a more clearer way. Okay. So I have worked with systems like what you have. I didn't spend a lifetime like you, but I pretty well know the concepts. And it is, for example, in communications engineering, not very strange to use genetic algorithms, for example, to design an antenna, etc., and to create generations and to have objective functions, or even to make the system run with very loose objective functions until it's optimized at a specific cost function, etc. So I know what you're talking about exactly.
And yet for a lot of my work, that's not what I do.
So, but then I will ask you this question. So you start this system from scratch. So this is why I gave the example of, or I gave the direct statement of, what you learn in your life does not go to your sperm. So you start this system from scratch. It has an initial state, and you keep running it. So this is like a new beaver who doesn't know anything about dams. It lives for 10 or 15 or 20 years. For some specific experience that it runs into, it knows how to build a dam. No, I don't mind that this can happen to an animal. I just said we can train animals, and we train humans. It happens to humans every day.
But you're jumping the gun. It doesn't know about building dams. You're jumping straight to building dams. All it knows about, when I start my agents, they don't know how to do anything. Now, one of them figures out, I can consume a resource. Okay, so now that one gains fitness, and everybody else who is doing nothing, they're dead. They don't produce offspring. But that one that eats one resource, that one gains fitness. Now, maybe 100 generations later, maybe 1,000 generations later, and a mutation occurs that causes them to move. Okay, so now they're moving and they're consuming resources. Okay, so the one that moves and consumes resources gets a higher fitness, has more energy, is more successful, produces more offspring, and so they have a higher fitness than those individuals who don't move. Okay, then a while goes on, and they evolve a more effective. Sorry about that. They evolve a more effective navigation scheme. Maybe they start responding to their environment. Maybe they figure out that, hey, once I eat a food, I don't have to go back to that location. And so, but they don't have that concept, but they derive a strategy. Maybe they form like they start doing like an S curve back and forth, and that effectively plows the resources. Then maybe they start using their sensors, right? And now you come in and you see, oh, I have this agent. And this agent knows it can follow the edge of a patch. I have a patch of resources, and it follows the edge and it spirals into the middle. It consumes all the resources in the middle, and then it finds that, oh, there's no more resource, and it finds another patch, and it consumes that patch, right? We've evolved this behavior. And if you just looked at that, you would go, that's amazing. Somebody must have coded that. How could it possibly know that? And what I'm saying is it figured it out step by step based on a random mutation that happened to be beneficial, going to fixation in the population, being followed by another random mutation. And it's the same, we see this all over. I've done this hundreds of times. Evolution, it's not based on, it's the success of the agent will determine if that agent produces offspring. The behavior of the agent is determined by its genome. Now, in some cases, you can have things where the parent agent, now it seems to be not the case in the beavers, although from the little bit that I read, it's unclear whether beavers teach their young. They may be teaching their young to some degree, but clearly the beavers have some instincts for building dams, at least. And so, but even then, if there's a cultural inheritance because the parents are teaching the kids, then that's also an evolved behavior. This is the argument, and we don't have to invoke anything supernatural. This information simply comes about as a result of the emergence of matter interacting and natural selection.
Okay, so I just wanted to let you complete your statement. So what I am saying is your experiments do not relate to this context. Why? Because the artifacts that you are training on the computer simulation, when you map them to real life, again, like a human being who has been born, he learns how to build the Empire State. He dies, you reset. You start from the new human being who does not know. We are not looking at morphological change.
You're not listening.
Let me complete. Sure. So now you are saying this one artifact or this one digital object, I will produce a mutation that will cause it to move, that other one to consume. You are referring to morphological things, and whatever you are doing to those digital creatures are things that you have already possible in your program. So what is happening now, they will not jump out of your computer because it's not part of your program. They will not project themselves in 3D because it's not part of your program. So you are putting a certain set of things that can happen into your simulation, and you are letting random events create generation after generation with enhanced capabilities. Good and well. What I am saying here is that the information necessary for the behavior of the beaver can be acquired through learning, but once the beaver that has learned a little bit dies, you start from scratch. The morphological change that makes the beaver do this or that and continue accumulating knowledge across generations. This is the whole point. Now, we can have a complete discussion about whether the other...
Don't add more. Don't add.
Yeah, I want to say we can have a complete discussion about whether this kind of algorithm that you are describing can justify evolution in terms of morphology and one creature changing to another creature, to another creature, to another creature through all the branching trees that are there in evolutionary thinking in terms of biological systems. This is a different discussion. I will disagree with you there too, but at least we will have something to discuss. But in this case, what you are describing, when you map it to real life, learning dies with the creature. You start from
but it's not. But I'm not talking about lifetime learning. For most of my agents, they do not have the capability for lifetime learning. They simply don't have the memory structure for it.
I want to map what you have said to real life.
I'm saying that their behavior is entirely determined by their genomes. And there are organisms whose behavior is entirely determined by their genome. An amoeba, its behavior is entirely determined by its genome. A C. elegans it's a tapeworm. Its behavior is entirely determined by its genome. Neuron in this, how the thing works. So since every neuron is well understood and how it affects the behavior, the neurons are the result of the genome. Whatever behavior the C. elegans has is a result of the genome. Again, the types of organisms that I work with, that I'm simulating, are not even at the complexity of a single-celled organism. I'm talking about like a chemical network. That's the level of complexity I'm working on. But even among that level of complexity, we see that evolution builds behavior. It can build. I don't know how else to say it. And there's no reason why I can't see over 80 million years that behavior could result in dam building or anything else.
So I don't mind that, once again, I don't mind that reactive, that this thing will, now I don't agree with evolutionary thinking categorically, but I agree that you can create a computer simulation where this action creates this response. I don't mind that. I don't mind that your experiment works at all. I don't mind that we can have adaptations in creatures that already have genetics, and epigenetics can create even more adaptations. And that can, at least by deletion of information, create some beneficial things sometimes. This is not my issue at all. These are all things that relate to the physical structure of the organism. At the end of the day, it developed a sense of heat. It runs from heat. You kill this sense for heat. It does not run from heat anymore. This thing, you give it a new locomotive capability or a new mobility capability, so now it can use it. Fine, all of this is fine. It does not justify a bird knows the location of Morocco. It does not justify that a beaver knows how to build a dam. It does not justify that a bird knows how to build a nest. It builds a nest exactly using the material of the nest. It finds those materials. It knows where to find the material. It knows how to weave it. It has a certain physical structure in 3D where the nest will be created that is good for that specific species of bird. The other species of bird may build a nest or not, and if it builds a nest, it is completely different. And every one of them comes with the instruction of the nest.
How come a bird, some birds, when they're in urban environments, will use substitute materials to build their nest? They don't know if they would typically build their nest out of grass. You'll find if there's shredded plastic, they'll grab plastic because it's a similar shape.
Great, Cliff. This adds to the complexity of the thing. The point is that now you put forward a nice question, is when you said, I don't know if the beaver knows that it's building a dam or not. Maybe it is just a series of responses, okay? But for example, in this example that you're saying, and maybe even some of the behaviors of the beavers will lend themselves to that. Okay, I cannot find grass, but I can find shreds of paper. I will use it. So this says something about the level of consciousness of the organism or of the creature or of the bird or whatever, what it's doing. It knows it needs to find something of a certain level of flexibility, certain kind of material that can be wound or interwoven into a nest. So it's not just this. It's not like just there is heat, I will retract my hand. It's not like this. But even if it is executing a set of instructions, finding materials in a dumb way, which doesn't seem like that. And when we are going to see the video, I think it's a very compelling case. Even in this case, my question is, where does the bill of material come from? How does this lend itself into this very organized set of instructions, and then maintaining, and then the timing, and then selecting the location, etc. The whole package of things, this is very complicated and very compact piece of information that is there in the brain of each of these animals, not only this kind of animal that we're talking about, but hundreds and thousands and millions of animals on the face of this planet. It's not just information about external physical animal that can be learned, and learning does not go to gametes. This is, I think you've mentioned your point. I've mentioned my point. I would like to take a few minutes, relax and watch the video, and we can continue the discussion. You have questions if you'd like. Yeah.
No, I just want to respond to what you said.
I don't mind going more, but I just don't want us to repeat ourselves. Yeah. Yeah.
No. I just, there were a couple of things that you brought up that I think were problematic. The fact that we see this in millions of species is again to be expected. They all developed in parallel. So if it's in one, we kind of expect it to be everywhere. So I think I think that's a weak argument that you're making. Like just if evolution can explain it, then evolution can explain all of it. And so the fact that there's more of it doesn't add any weight to the argument. The other thing is that the alternative hypothesis to the fact that the bird is conscious about what it needs to make a nest is that a bird, anytime it comes across a material that has certain properties, will induce the bird to building a nest.
And then now, but just to answer to your points before we go further, I was saying there are millions of examples, just to say that this is not something coincidental. This is abundant in nature. So I'm saying that this is not only the beaver that we have; it is abundant. So yeah.
Every now, species is a parallel process of evolution. Every species is a parallel process of evolution. They're all co-evolving, they're all interacting.
So what I'm saying is that evolution cannot explain it anyway. So
Well, right. Well, what I'm saying is whether it can or it can't, if there are more instances of it, doesn't matter. Because if it can do it for the beaver, it could do it for the bird. If it can't do it for the beaver, it can't do it for the bird. And so just saying that doesn't add anything.
So now the question is, can it do it or not?
And my answer is that I have evidence that if I can run an open-ended simulation. And there was one more point, which was it sort of gets into simulation theory, although I don't think that simulation theory necessarily describes our universe, but it certainly describes what I'm building and how the agents that I work with exist. They exist in a universe of my creation. So I create a universe. I state that the universe has rules. This is how the universe works. We live in a universe that has rules. We have quarks and we have gluons, and they form atoms. And for the most part, we've got the atoms on the periodic table. There are exotic atoms, and we keep finding bigger. We smash particles together and we find bigger atoms, and we find isotopes. But for the most part, it's hydrogen, helium, carbon, oxygen, iron, whatever, right? The stuff on the periodic table. That's the stuff. And the way that stuff behaves when it interacts, it may be massive, the number of possible materials that you can generate from everything that's on the periodic table. But that is it. That's all you have. It is a finite set. There's a finite amount of matter in the universe. There's a finite of states that matter can be in. And so my system may have a very restricted state space relative to the universe, but to say that the universe somehow doesn't have a restrictive state space, I think is fallacious. I have a simpler form of evolution. It runs faster. It's easier. It's more tractable. It's easier to study, but it is still a parallel instance of evolution. It has all the qualities necessary to describe evolution.
Okay, so my whole point is that your simulation does not map to real life, because what we are describing is something that resets with the lifetime of each creature. So anyway, I would rather go and watch the video with you now.
Wait, you're discounting inheritance. Do you not agree that mutations occur and that mutations can be inherited?
What I have said in response to that is whatever you have learned, Cliff, in your life is not affecting your baby. It does not affect your sperms now, and it does not affect your baby tomorrow.
If my baby has a mutation that changes the way that its brain works, but if there's a mutation in my sperm that causes my baby's brain to work in a different way, then that would be inherited by my baby's child.
No problem, but there is no mutation that will encode your experience, and there is no mutation that will make them.
It's not my experience. It's my behavior.
Good.
It's my behavior.
So I don't mind your behavior in terms of the response of your body to your sensors is not relevant to what we are going to see in the video with this beaver doing. This is what I'm saying. I think I think the issue here is, Cliff, is that, okay, you have certain epistemology there. You have a certain worldview that way. At the end of the day, at the fundamental level, this is quarks, this is electromagnetic fields, this is a finite set of interacting particles and waves at the end of the day. And if there is any phenomena on the face of this planet or anywhere in the universe, it only has to be interpreted, or it has to be a manifestation of this finite set of interacting particles. This is where you're coming from. So now the problem with this ontological position is, if you start and end there, you are already automatically setting yourself up not to accept any external source of information whatsoever. You have restricted your set of acceptable solutions. This is the whole point. Now, what I'm asking you here, because then how can Cliff get out of his position of agnosticism? If you're starting from this point and rejecting anything else outside of it, you have to consider that there might be other explanations. Otherwise, you are rejecting any explanation from the outside.
I accept that.
Okay.
No, I'm not rejecting that explanation. I'm saying I have a parsimonious explanation that doesn't require me to bring anything in that's outside of the system. My point of view overall is that I start from a position of hard solipsism. I start from a position that the only thing that I am confident about is my own existence. And then I extend and I start to accept, although I don't know with any degree of certainty, that things are true. And I only include things for which I have evidence. And so when it comes to, there's a problem. You say, well, how can you get complex behaviors in animals? You say, oh, well, I don't know. And then you get this answer that, oh, well, evolution, you can evolve behaviors. You can get mutations that change the way that the brain is built, that changes the way that the organism behaves. And mind you, it happens before brains, right? Single organizations changes their gene regulatory network, right? Before you even have a brain, you're already looking at behaviors evolving as a result of evolutionary processes. And so I say, okay, great. So now I have an explanation within the physical. I don't have to bring in the supernatural. And I'm not saying I'm discounting the supernatural. I'm just saying, why would I bring it in if I have a working solution?
Because I have answered this already, because your physical processes does not account for this kind of complex information that relate to the external world of the physical system that you're studying.
Papers that say that it does. So we disagree.
So
you disagree.
So my answer.
You can't tell me. So I haven't done it. This is literally my area of research. So my answer.
Yeah, so my answer to you is that the simulation that you do, where you have generations after generations of the same digital artifacts, with some of them going away and the ones that survive are maintaining the features that they have gained from all the generations of the simulation, do not apply to the accumulation of information, because accumulation of information does not go to the sperm. Anyway, let's stop here, because we have gone through the cycle before.
It's a mutation in the sperm. Which then results in every cell of the offspring having that mutation, including the offspring sperms.
So mutations in the sperms or in the genome, there is no evidence that mutations in the genome of any creature will teach it how to build a dam or a nest.
Which is why I run digital evolution and show that you can evolve behaviors.
Yeah. So digital evolution evolving a physical behavior of the artifact that you are running in the simulation does not, because the research is there and nobody has explained that the beaver is doing this because it's included in his genetics. If the paper is there and evidence is there, I will concede. I don't mind. But what I am telling you is that this kind of behavior and the similar behaviors that is ubiquitous across nature for complex behaviors of animals, there's no evidence it's in genetics, and hence mutations is out of context. I would just want to pause here for a few minutes, and we watch the video, and we can have some questions and see where we can take this. Inventory beliefs, and it starts by calling them established engineers. I would like to urge actually the audience who have seen this to go and watch more beaver videos about all the steps they take. He said they have boulders, they have wood, they have mud. You saw how they fixed this. This was not a sensory response. They knew exactly what they were doing. They brought one thing after one thing. They walked on it. They leveled it. This is crazy, Cliff. It's these guys. I think it's obvious that you know what they're doing. They're not robots. These are not robots, Cliff.
So first, the stream's not playing. So it says that the stream was suspended for policy violation because I think it didn't like you playing the video that long.
Ah, really? Did it? Okay. Are we cut off already?
Yeah, the text is still there, but that's it.
Ah, okay. Let's see what.
But I will say, look, I think it's reasonable that you're incredulous about this, but I don't know what to say. I mean, I've in much shorter periods of time, I've seen complexity evolve, and I don't see why you can't get arbitrarily more complexity.
Let's just give me 1 minute to I need to know what's happening on YouTube exactly. Just give me 1 minute, and I see if we can start this or no. Just give me 1 minute because I think we have been cut off from our audience. I think.
Yeah, no, we were. Definitely.
Yeah, just a sec.
Oh, now we're back.
Are we back?
Yeah. Well, we lost some audience, but it is what it is.
But we are back, are we?
Yes. Yeah, we're playing through YouTube.
We are back now. Okay, so
Yep.
So you didn't like playing the video. I think we both made our points, and I think at a point of time you have to defer to the audience. They can take their own positions about everything. I don't know, but we have lost most of our audience. I think we only have a few, if any. But let's see if they had some questions left for us. Wow, there's plenty of comments here. Wow. No, I don't think we can actually browse this whole lot. I would have rather that YouTube has not cut us off, and then we would just ask them to put questions. But anyway, Cliff, I hope you've enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, I think I personally have seen that evolution results in complexity and results in complex behaviors where you wouldn't expect them, and that a lot of times when you finally get down to disentangling exactly how it happens, it ends up that it's not as complex as you thought it. Like there's a lot of parts to it, but they're not doing what they thought you were doing. I mean, at one point it looked like we had evolved cooperation, and we didn't. They were using basically the randomness of the environment to choose roles, and usually that would end up becoming resulting in a high level of cooperation. But it was basically, I mean, I wouldn't say it was coincidental. It was very well evolved behavior, but they were not. The agents were not communicating. I mean, it was amazing because we had a situation where agents could not communicate, and yet they were performing behaviors in a way that it made it look like they were communicating with each other. They were electing a leader, and then they were basically funneling resource to the leader, and it was like, how the hell are they doing that? Well, the way that they were doing it was that they came up with a strategy to get the same effect without having to actually understand what's happening. So.
Yeah, so I think the conclusion on my side is that what is happening really in life, the level of the level of knowledge and wisdom that is involved into building a dam and maintaining it, building a lodge and maintaining it, building canals and using it, building a refrigerator and using it, having a ventilation system like this one where you have this chimney with with hot air coming out, and those guys living safely inside, using boulders, using wood, using mud, this engineered thing leveled up, etc., etc., etc. There's too much to happen in the lifetime of one beaver, and even if it comes in bits and pieces, yeah, even if it happens in bits and pieces, as you would like to explain, yeah, even if it happens in bits and pieces, there is no transmission mechanism between what a creature learns and what its sperms contain. There is no evidence that a mutation in the genetic structure of a beaver, yeah. On the other side, there is no evidence of mutation.
It's about what it inherits, not about what it learns. And
yeah, so at one point,
don't say it's don't make me a Lamarckian. I'm not a Lamarckian.
Yeah,
I'm an evolutionist, and so it's about the mutations that occur within the genome that are inheritable that affect behavior. Now, whether or not you accept that those can result in complex behaviors, that's the question. But you keep equating, you keep trying to say that it's about experience and inheriting experience. And I'm saying it's not about inheriting experience unless there's cultural transmission, unless the parents are teaching the young, then you could pass on things that you learned. But that's not what beavers appear to be doing. Beavers appear to have instincts to build dams, and that would mean that in my model, that would mean that it would have to be passed genetically, which means it would have to be the result of mutations, not experience. Just want to be clear that that's what I'm arguing.
Good. So to wrap up, from my side, to what you have said, at least, I've given at a point of time in the discussion where a beaver, had a lodge that fell over a river. So this is actually experience. This has nothing to do with mutations. So if you want to concede that this is not the case, fine, then one of your argument does not exist. And the second part is, no, it is genetic. Maybe there are mutations, and the mutations cause these behaviors. And then if those behaviors increase fitness, then the accumulation of behaviors can lead to something that looks complex, while at the core of it, it is just simple things that are coming together. So what I'm saying is that this thing...
it doesn't necessarily have to be simple, right? It may be that it is complex, but it's still an evolved behavior.
Yeah. So evolution is you collect one change at a time, or you can even do something parallel, but it's a change plus a change plus a change. Each one adds a level of fitness, and then hence you get to something bigger. So what I'm saying is there is no evidence that this kind of behavior, that includes knowledge about the external world, there is no evidence that this is it. And if it is with the kind of behavior that you have seen in this video, and in so many other videos, not only about this creature, but so many other creatures where there is information about locations, about season changes, about the properties of materials, about designs of things in 3D, about utility of things, connecting different artifacts together, like a dam and a lodge and a refrigerator, and channels and canals and trees, and how to cut them, etc., etc. All of those things do not lend themselves to be genetic mutations in the genome.
That's your claim.
I think at the end of the day, maybe one day there is this crazy discovery that there is some part of the genome where there is information about the external world is encoded in a specific way, to the extent that it can, after embryogenesis, reflects itself as information in neurons, stored in neurons. I will be really quite surprised, but there are crazy stuff really in genetics that surprises every day. This looks like a very, very far-fetched. But then my question again will be, as I said in my discussion, would be, how did information about the external world, about the map of the globe, about things like materials and building instructions and maintenance instructions, etc., how did they get themselves into the genome? If they have been collected through experience, both of you and me concede that they don't go to gametes. If they are mutations, chemical mutations, how would chemical mutations map to the external world? I think this is something very difficult to happen, and if it's difficult,
it changes It changes the initial configuration, which changes the response scheme. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So what I think is happening here, Cliff.
I mean, I just, what I want to do is I would be comfortable ending. I think that this conference, I need to end this conversation to leave at 5. But I do, what the problem is, you're trying to state that you've won, that you've demonstrated a point of view which I cannot refute. And what I'm saying, I'm not trying to shoot you down. I'm not saying that God doesn't exist and that he didn't do it. But you're trying to say that my way is impossible, and that I do not concede. I will not concede that point, right? And I think it's very dishonest for you to continuously just say, well, it cannot be, it cannot be, it cannot be. You are incredulous. You don't believe it. That's fine. What you cannot do is say it cannot be. And then you're going to go on to say, oh, I talked to this person and he could not show me how it could be. Yeah, show me that God did it. Otherwise, so, you are at best as weak as my position.
To be very clear, what I said is that there is no proof that what you are saying is what is happening.
And I have just actually.
Okay, and what I also said that
there's no proof either way, except my way is based on physical stuff.
Yeah. So yes, your way is based on physical stuff. Absolutely. Hello, Cliff.
Yeah, I'm still there. I got hung up for a second.
You're frozen. Yeah, you froze. Yeah. So what I'm saying, what I was just going to say is that the background and the initial ontological position of each of us is causing both you and me to try to find an explanation in his, ontology and epistemology at the end of the day. So you start from the position of, if it's happening in real life, it has to be physical because real life is about physics. And if it's happening in a biological creature, it needs to relate to its biological structure. The biological creature came from its genome, so it needs to be in its genome. The genome can change by mutation, so this has to be transitional, one way or the other.
I'm not. I disagree. It's not how it has to be. I'm saying it's reasonable that it could be this way. Based on everything I've seen and everything I've studied, does not counter that it could be that way.
Good. So what my response to that, because if you watch all my previous debates,
you've cut out for me. Hold on a second. You're muted. Sorry. Oh, it still says you're muted. There we go. Now you're back.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my connection seems to be kind of laggy.
Yeah, there has been a mutation in my mic.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that, what I'm saying is not that. Okay, what I'm saying is that what you are saying is not proven. What I am saying is we can have a whole discussion about what mutation can do to the morphology. What I am saying that this, in my opinion, okay, I'm not saying you concede anything or you don't. In my opinion, what the beaver and the bird and the lion and the cat and the dog and every single creature that has complex instinctual behavior, quote unquote, does not lend itself to be a series of robotic reactions. Doesn't look like that. Those guys look for the boulders, look for the wood, cut the tree.
I accept that that's your position. But I mean, we don't have to litigate as I accept that that's your position. I was just my point was just that you were saying so I accept that you are not convinced, but that does not mean that it cannot be.
Yeah. So my question to you is,
that you could be wrong.
Sorry?
Do you concede that you could be wrong?
To be wrong in what?
Which part? You concede that I could be right, that it could be that the behavior is encoded in the genome, that's a possibility.
actually, during the discussion, I said, if it is found that it is encoded in the genome, I will be very surprised. But then I will ask the question, how did it get there?
Okay,
Because
well, that
this
would
is
be a
not
different
in this is
conversation.
yeah
Sure,
yeah
sure,
this
sure.
is this is
That's fine.
actually
That's
in my
fine.
presentation I said my problem is that the information exists in the beaver because it is acting upon it. It must exist in it. Now it's a living
Yes,
complete
I agree.
beaver. It's in its brain. So the question now is, how did it get into its brain? So I have
Well,
put actually one of two
and
explanations. Yeah,
well,
I have put
there's
two
two.
explanations.
I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. You
Yeah,
don't have to say it. But there's
yeah.
two. But
So
there's two things. Is what information? The information of the behavior is actually in the brain. But the other question is, what does the beaver know? Right? There's a concept of representation. That representation is, what does the agent know about its environment? But an agent does not have to have representation in order to act. Again, a single-celled organism acts. It responds in a cogent way to its environment, but it has no representation of the environment. I mean, some people would argue that it does because it behaves in a cogent way. But as far as we understand things and representation and wants and motivations, the single-celled organism does not have emotions. It simply responds. It has chemical pathways and it responds, right? So in this case, I actually do need to say right. So you know that's certainly evolved behavior. That's directly the result of morphology. I agree. Now, to me, all of it is a result of morphology because behavior is implemented in neurons, and that's just morphology. So I don't see a difference between the structures that hold the information and a chemical pathway. It doesn't matter. It's neurological circuits. It doesn't matter. But which again is why we're looking at this differently, because I think that you're probably considering that there has to be something more than the neurons firing to the intellect.
yeah. So this is my question to you. Actually, I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Would you because we are here in this world, we will not see God. Okay, we will not see the supreme being. Otherwise, it will not be the supreme being. Yeah, or he will not be the supreme being. We are here to infer his existence to our best knowledge and either accept it or not accept it. So my question to you is, Cliff, do you see a possibility that this information is coming from a conscious external source to the physical structure of the universe or not? Is it possible?
I mean, a possibility, yes. I don't think it's likely, but I think
okay.
Anything is possible.
Why?
Why do I think it's possible?
Why is it not likely? Why is it not likely?
Why is it not likely? Because when I look at the way that the world works, well, because of the number of explanations that I have for things, the number of things that I feel that I have a handle on being able to explain, I don't need to bring in something external. I went down sort of the deep rabbit hole of religion, philosophy, and one of the interesting things was getting my head wrapped around how I felt about the Kalam cosmological argument. And essentially what it came down to was you have a paradox. You either have an uncaused cause or you have an infinite regress. Either way, you're at a loss. And so I throw up my hands and I go, this is beyond my comprehension. I cannot comprehend of a solution. And so I am willing to just let it go. Could it be that God made the universe and left? Sure, it totally could. I don't know where the universe came from. I don't know where the matter came from. But given that there is matter, and given that there are emergent properties of matter, I have no problem getting from that to humans running around being intelligent. Right? I have no problem with that whole series of events. It's the initiating event. Yeah, I have no idea. And so, yeah, God could have done it. But God could also have his hand on the till, and he could be making decisions every day. And or God just steps in every once in a while and he tweaks things. I don't know. Could totally be, but I don't see a reason to accept it.
Cliff, I just want to close here with two things. Number one, I had this very nice discussion with Dr. William Lane Craig about the Kalam cosmological argument. And he described it as one of the best one that he had. okay, or the most intense one that he had, or something in these lines. So that was very compact, like 90 minutes or 1 hour thing, da 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 da. So I might actually, since we brought it up, for everybody here to have a look at it. And the second thing is, because I really like what you're doing, Cliff, if we were those digital objects in your simulation, okay, and you are the one running the simulation, what do you think of that? Will we just keep denying you exist because the simulation seems to run without you?
Yeah,
While
because
actually
from
you
their
have set
point
the
of
initial,
view,
because you have actually set the initial conditions. You ran the program, and you are actually watching, and you might actually even be intervening every now and a while to change the course of the experiment. But we would
yep.
have no idea that you're doing it. To us, the computer program is just running, and things seem causal. But the actual thing is, information is flowing from you to the system all the time. Now, those objects in the simulation,
Wait.
they
Hold on,
need
hold on,
to
hold on, hold on. You
consider
asked me.
they need to
Hold
consider
on.
something
Hold on.
is making this
You
happen.
you asked a question, and now you're adding to it. Don't gish gal at me. So
Yeah.
if we were them, then I would think the appropriate course of action for them to be would be to say, look, I don't know how this universe got to be here, but it seems to follow these rules. We did our science. This is, if I eat the red food, I get this. If I eat the blue food, this happens. I don't know why. It just is. And so since I have no idea why, I can conjecture, I can hypothesize, I can philosophize, but I don't know where it came from. I'm not going to make something up because I don't have an answer.
They would be wrong. But they would be
No,
wrong.
they're not making anything. They're not making anything up. They're not making anything up. How can you be wrong if you don't make anything up?
But they are factually wrong, because you do exist and you are running the simulation.
No, but they're not saying I don't exist. They're not saying I do exist. They're saying I don't know where the simulation came from. I just know I'm here and this stuff is here and I'm living my life. That's what I know.
So
and I'm not gonna. I'm
the
not saying
problem
God
is
doesn't exist.
Yeah, but the problem is there is 3 positions here. Cliff does not exist. Cliff does exist. Well, we don't know. It's like 50-50 or something. Okay. But actually,
it's not
Cliff
50-50.
does exist.
No, it's not 50-50. We don't know. It's just we don't know.
Okay, but actually Cliff does exist. So the right position is Cliff exists. It is much more right than
from their perspective, they have no evidence that Cliff exists, and therefore I don't know is correct. They should not base their actions on my existing or not existing if they have no proof of it.
So now Cliff wants to make
you are
those
claiming
creatures...
so what, from our perspective, I don't know whether God exists or not. You are claiming that God does exist, right? So you need to prove that to me. I'm not going to act as though God exists just because you said God exists.
So
I was
for
raised
the benefit,
Jewish,
yeah,
right? And so, like, I don't accept that God. I have people. Most of the people around me in Michigan are Christian. I don't accept that God. Then there's Islam. I don't accept that God. I don't accept the Greek gods. I don't accept the Norse God. Because I see evidence. Do I have all the answers? No, but that's no reason to make stuff up.
So I just wanted to give this example, because now if Cliff wants to send a message to the digital artifacts on his simulation, and he causes another digital object to behave in a certain way, that they can put all the right reasons why it is behaving this way, still following the rules of the simulation, but it's behaving differently. It knows where to find things from the outset. It collects this or that, and then the explanation is maybe this creature has been before us and it has evolved more than us, and they just keep on putting the same explanation for every phenomena that they see. It must be because this universe is this way all the time.
If we didn't have inheritance and natural selection, I would be in trouble, but we have inheritance and natural selection. So we have a viable explanation. But what if God does exist and the critters in the simulation think I'm God, and now they're all going to hell because they've been looking at the wrong God?
Yeah. So the point
what
is, So the point is, if Cliff is going to punish those who deny his
No,
existence,
I'm
they
not
are
going to
in
punish.
trouble.
I'm not going to punish them, but God would, because they would have it
Yeah,
wrong. They would have to have souls, and they would have it wrong. They
yeah,
should be me, false idol. I'm not all powerful. I'm just all powerful over them. So if
absolutely.
you're
So now
saying
the
God
question,
made a simulation and we're in the simulation, I have no way of refuting that, but God built the simulation in such a way that I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So can he really blame me for not knowing? I don't think so.
yeah, well, that's the very first point that I started my presentation. We are here with free will to take this decision. So at the end of the day, you are
I,
Jewish, and he brought down
well,
your
at this point, I
yeah.
mean, yeah. Well, technically, I'm not. So technically, I don't know what I am, because technically, it's by father's blood, and no, it's my mother's blood. And my mother was born Christian, and my father was Jewish, and my mother converted because otherwise my grandmother wouldn't have let the marriage happen. So I don't know. Am I technically? I don't know, but I don't think it matters.
No, I mean, you were exposed to the Jewish religion, for example. So he sent you the Jewish message. He sent me the Islamic message. Now you chose to be agnostic to your message. I chose to accept my message. But at the end of the day, each of us has taken a decision because a message has arrived. Now, your position would
You would take
be,
the message.
I do not know if this message is a message. Maybe it's somebody who has fabricated.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You would think it's a
Yeah,
message. I think it's not a message,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think the problem with this, Cliff, before we close, is that if you start with an ontological position of I don't know, you can actually put I don't know as the answer to everything. If you start your ontological
Yes.
position with God does not exist, then the answer will be methodological naturalism all the way. Even if the explanation is there, then maybe the explanation will occur. If you
Yeah, but
start
if
your
you start with
ontological position, yeah, maybe if you start your ontological position like me, then things that have naturalistic explanations that can lend themselves to future or can lend themselves to futuristic and naturalistic explanations, I will not have a problem with them. But at the end of the day, I will believe that this simulation is created by somebody, and then the information flowing into is coming from somebody. It
who
goes
knows?
back to the same question.
I mean,
I know.
how it got
I know.
started, I don't know, but I certainly would not blame my digital organisms for not knowing that I exist.
If you talk to
And
them
that's
and
not something I
they
would
just
do.
reject,
So,
yeah,
you know,
talk to them and they reject the message, it's gonna be a tough decision now.
that's fine.
This
That's
is the
fine,
trick.
because
This is the
here's the
trick.
thing. I'll say, well, I should go already. Now I'm going to be late, but I'll say one more
Sure.
thing, and all I'm going to say is, um, let's say that God came down and presented Himself to me and said, "I am God." I'm now. I cannot conceive of a test, some proof that God could give me that would convince me that they are God, because they could simply be the one who made the simulation that I'm in, but they're in a simulation themselves, let's say. Or to put it another way, they could be something greater than me, more powerful than me, but not God. Right? In fact, anything that could make me believe things, just go in my mind and make me believe things, could convince me that they're God. And so how without and even if they gave me godlike powers, they say, "Oh, I'm going to give you godlike powers for." I thought about this. I said, "Oh, okay. How would you prove that you're God?" I said, "Give me godlike powers." They're okay for an hour. You're going to have godlike powers. Well, guess what? Here's the problem. They could convince me that I had godlike powers. They could convince me that I ran around for an hour with godlike powers. I did whatever I want, but it was all in my brain. And they convinced everybody I knew, everyone who I interacted with, that it actually happened, because they have that much power, even though they're not actually God. So this is the problem. I know you're sitting here and saying, well, then there's nothing that could prove it to you. But I'm saying I wish. But I wish
Absolutely,
that I
man.
could think. Here's the
Absolutely.
thing. But here's the thing. I'm saying that I cannot conceive of something that God could do to convince me. But God certainly could. And so I would love it for God to show up and do the thing that would convince me. I don't know what, I would love it just so I could know what it is, because I can't even see unfalsifiable hypothesis at the end of the day. God's just
What,
it's
what
an
I'm
you're making an assertion. You're providing a solution to a problem, but we cannot test it. And if we cannot test it, I have to remain skeptical. I'm not taking a negative position on it. I'm just remaining skeptical. I do not accept it. It's the best I can do. I wish I could do better.
I doubted that this will be your position, because I have had similar discussions with agnostics and atheists. And at the end of the day, I ask them, what do you want? They say, okay, maybe God should show himself. And then they would say, but if they show himself, how can we know that he's God? Maybe he's playing some other entity is playing with our brain. So my problem is, here is where the ontological position comes. The ontological position is skepticism all the way. This is the problem. You are locking yourself into this loop. So anyway,
I don't know how. Look, I didn't do it. God did it to me. I'm skeptical. I don't know what to tell you.
I'll tell you something.
I don't know what to tell you. I'm skeptical.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. I had a similar discussion with somebody who's not a scientist. He's a guy called Apostate Prophet. Maybe you're aware of him. But we went into free will because, we went into free will. Is God really making you or not? And then there is the William Lane Craig thing. If you'd like, just go through those. Maybe we can discuss. I enjoyed discussing things with you. I hope you did the same. You're a smart person.
Yeah, no, it was a little frustrating, but I can. The thing is that if we talk about evolution, I feel very. I mean, it's what I do. If we talk about, free will, and I mean, I have opinions, but there are people who know it better than I do, and like personally, I think that all of metaphysics, most of philosophy, and all of metaphysics is garbage. I think it's all just conjecture, and I throw it all out. So I have no interest in debating philosophy, beyond the philosophy of the physical.
Well, you see, I don't really debate for it. I debate because I care. I discuss because I care. It's not about winning or losing.
I want to live in a world where people believe things that are true, because I believe that's going to be the best world. It's going to be the best for me. It's going to be the best for everybody else. We're going to have the least harm. We're going to have the most well-being. That's, and if people are skeptical, I think that's how you get there. If you're skeptical and you question things, then I think that's how you get there.
I lived my time of skepticism. It was very early in my teens. And I think I didn't change my position since 13 until today. And I don't know how you can cross over the point. Maybe they are playing with my mind. I think this ontological position is very difficult to break. The only one who can break it is you, really. But I really wish you well-being, and I wish, because I like the good for you.
To chat with you.
Yeah, I would really, I enjoyed this, and I would like maybe that someday you are convincing somebody else to break out of the circle. Please don't take anything as offending.
No, and
I enjoyed the discussion we had previously a couple of years ago.
If I remember that correctly, I'm sorry if I was rude. I think I got rude. If it's the one I think it was. But
thank you.
But I mean, whatever. Something. No. You're totally wrong. Yada yada yada. Whatever.
Don't worry. Now I have no hard feelings. I don't think our discussion was bad at all. It was quite scientific. But even in this discussion, I hope you all the best, and thank you for coming over to explain your point. I hope those who will watch this will have benefit and see both points. And at the end of the day, we can just explain what we want to explain, and people can choose what they want to choose. So thank you very much, Cliff, for coming over. And I would be glad to talk to you again anytime.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
See you again soon. Everybody who's watched this, share it. Tell me your opinions in the comment section. If somebody else who's a scientist, a philosopher, somebody who knows biology, biochemistry, physics would like to discuss this, please tag me in the comment section. I will be glad to host you and to share this with the world. We are here to make this, so let's them to the best of our knowledge. Thank you very much, Cliff, and thanks to everybody who's been here. I'll put the extra and exit. Here we go.